Hello, welcome back to another book review. This one should be short, honestly. I mean, I don't think there's a whole lot to really say about this one. Because also the book itself is really short. Um, but decided to keep doing DC readings, and decided to take a little bit of a detour from, I mean, kind of, sort of, from my Batman readings, because last one we talked about was The Long Halloween. And I do plan on reading the next part of that story, which is Dark Victory. That's probably where I'm headed next. But took a little bit of a detour in response to a trailer for one of the upcoming DC projects, and I decided, you know what, let me get myself familiar with one of these characters, just so when the movie comes out, I have a little more idea of who this character is, and have just putting a face to the specific character, which is ironic given who we're about to talk about. But yeah, I just got done reading this. I decided just to kind of plow through the last few pages because, like I said, it's rather short. I think it's like something like 70, 80 pages. I'm not sure. But I just got done reading this, so we're going to talk about it for a little bit here. So that book I just got done reading was Batman One Bad Day, Clayface. So this is part of a series, I believe, the small little series. Sorry, called One Bad Day, which is, basically relating to the villains and their downfall. What kind of put them in this state, or maybe, I don't know if the origins or if they explore anything like that. But specifically, I looked at Clayface because, of course, the Clayface film, which is due to come out in October, had their first trailer come out a few weeks ago. So I wanted to kind of get familiar with the character. I'm familiar with the animated series a little bit, so I think I've only seen it once. That one episode where Clayface is in, that two-parter. I would have to revisit that also, but I wanted to get more of another look through the comic medium, who this character is. So I decided to check out this comic because that's the one that I got pointed to the most based on Reddits and reading on forums and stuff like that. So this is following Basil Carlo. So not Matt Hagen. Matt Hagen's the version that we're going to see in the movie. Basil Carlo is I believe, the first incarnation of Clayface. The first, the more classic, more known version of Clayface. Matt Hagen, I think, is a more modern version. I could be wrong. Yeah, I could be completely wrong about that. But this is a one-shot comic, so this is not a collection of like multiple issues. How like stuff like The Long Halloween and other stuff is, where it's like multiple issues compiled into one book. This is just one-shot comic. It's one story, one issue, and that's it. Right? Very similar to the Man Who Laughs, which was also just one shot sort of deal. So as the story goes, this is following Basil Carlo, and very right up front that he is in fact a shape-shifting monstrous figure. He goes by a different alias. He has a different name because he is notorious. People know about him. He's not just some aimless, lonely figure. People are familiar with the name Clayface, and he is an aspiring actor. He wants to, branch out, and he's doing his best, to navigate. He works with other people who also are in, similar positions. One of which is wanting to write a screenplay. Another of which, man, what's his name? Is it Comey? I forgot his name. It starts with a C. I wish I can remember. I think it's Comey. I could be totally wrong about that, but he has a friend of his that also acts. And one day, these two go to an audition, and Basil is very passionate, about acting. He's very, passionate about the art form itself. So much so that he's also full of himself. He believes himself to be a great performer. So everything that he believes that he's doing is just. He is right for the character, right for everything that he is doing. And he's not willing to conform. He's not willing to, to bend the knee for the industry standard. And uh, eventually, his friend ends up getting the part that he was looking into, and Basil decides to not let that happen, and he kills his friend. At least it appears to be his friend, and goes off on a pretty much a slaughter fest of those who are going to be getting in his way to seeking fame and seeking glory, and to basically provide a study of narcissism about somebody who is full of themselves, somebody who doesn't believe to be in the wrong, who believes that all they're doing is right, and about a layering of insecurity also on top of that. Um, and a evolution and a further evolving of of in some ways about conformity, but conformity in the wrong places, to where it leads to him actually developing personality disorder, where the more people he kills, the more people he's like shape shifting himself into, and it affects him. It's not something that he just carries with him, right? This is something that also deeply affects his psyche, because he's having to put up all these personas and having to act out as these people. And the more people that he takes on, the more that affects his personal psyche. And to the very end of the book, where he's stuck in Arkham, and he has like all these, personas that he's killed, and he's just, you know, acting them out and doing this and that. So it affects him, but he does it all because he is looking for that validation. He's looking for that he's looking for his own place, essentially. And he doesn't want to be he doesn't want any criticism. He doesn't want any pushback. He just wants to keep on pushing forward, because as he says throughout the book, he has a vision. He has an idea of sorts, something that he aspires for. um, it's just the ways he's going about it is just not the right ways. Um, and I like that about the book. I like that, to some extent, it's a sliver. You you can sympathize to some extent what is happening, because it makes a comment about the film industry, and about people trying to get into the business, and kind of the kind of the shady sides, and also the lack of artistic merit to some extent that the industry holds. And someone like Basil is very much wanting to maintain the artistry. Someone who is caring and very passionately about the crafting of characters and the crafting of work itself, whereas everybody else is just doing it for work's sake, just for a paycheck, and not taking it oh so seriously. um, and it it, it's all well and good, but it's how he approaches that, and ultimately what he does, that creates that downfall and instills that narcissism into the reader, and realizing that, especially from the jump, the way that he is holding himself, the way he casts himself amongst people, you can very much tell that this guy is full of himself. He is not somebody that is sincere or intriguing, or completely sympathetic. The little sliver of sympathy that I was addressing is like, there's a moment in the book where Basil is being pursued by Batman, because Batman also appears in the book. Um, and Basil basically tries to make his case, to Batman, saying that, look, the industry isn't what it is. I, I, I had hoped for something different, and then I eventually saw that everybody is kind of in their own ways, you know, a either a fraud, or just not giving a shit about the art itself. And I want to be that, and I want to present my vision. To which Batman simply replied, "It's like you killed 9 people though." And that's really what matters most, is that what you're doing is wrong, right? And that's what Batman's ultimately trying to get to him, that Basil, is that he's not putting down his rhetoric to some extent, but he's saying to him that all that is also bullshit, because of what you're literally doing. So And it's furthering again this idea about narcissism, somebody who fully believes that they're in the right, who doesn't believe that they could be wrong at any turn, and all of their actions can be validated from that simple rhetoric that Basil is saying, which you can understand to some extent, but it's when you see the actions of what that person is doing to get to that place, to further that agenda, it just doesn't come across as genuine or as completely understandable. So, so I like the overall idea of what Clayface is, at least by the specific comic. I do think by a general story, I do think though it is very one note. Basically, Basil talks to people, he does not get what he desires, and then he kills them. And that's basically what happens throughout the book. It's basically that of a slasher, where, every time he appears, he, has a different form of a different person of the previous person he has killed. And the next person that he talks to, in the hopes to gaining more, loses more. And he decides to enact violence because of that. And I think that there's some interesting artwork being done, especially once he like attacks his victims. I like how the clay kind of just acts like a shower of just like mud and stuff like that. Um, and I like I like when he is in his true form, like you kind of get the monstrous look, where it's like just kind of hulking and, you know, kind of like deformed, but, also, approachable, to some extent. Um, I will say that some of the artwork at the end of the book, like they have like little artwork done at the end. I feel like those were kind of better to some extent than what we got in the actual comic, um, but it's a very simplistic story that I think has an interesting comment on about both the industry, but also about a person in that place and just about a narcissist in general. About somebody who does not believe they're in the wrong and just keeps on moving in that direction, and the kind of destructive capability that they possess. The kind of the destructive capabilities that a narcissist absolutely does possess. Um, so, so I think it's an interesting read. I don't think it's like an amazing, or well informed or philosophical or in depth, type of read. It's a very one note, straightforward type of premise. But underneath it, I think that there's an interesting comment to be made about Basil Carlo as a fundamental character. He is not a good person. He is not. This is not in the case of like the Joker movie where they like try to sympathize, the gag character, or with other characters here and there, where you can understand why they do the things that they do. Like Two-Face also from The Dark Knight. They don't try to really sympathize him as much as just register like here is who he is, here is how he functions, and here is what happens when he does the things that he wants to do. It doesn't benefit anybody, and it doesn't give anybody um, comfort or any form of like understanding. It's all to do with just Basil and what he wants. And it's an interesting comment. It's an interesting position to have for this read, and I kind of liked it in that regard. So it truly is a villain story. It truly is a villain story with a slight edge of understanding when it comes to the industry that Basil's trying to reside in. But how he goes about it is all wrong. And he doesn't see that, and therefore that makes him the function of which the book's trying to get at. He is that of a narcissist. And I really like the way that they kind of attack that subject to some extent. So yeah, interesting little read. Not like amazing, but gets the point across. And I think that it's it provides an interesting comment. Definitely provides an interesting comment, both in an industry standard and by a social standard. So so you guys let me know if you guys have read this comic. Have you guys read the One Bad Day Clayface comic? Are you guys familiar with the One Bad Day series? Is that something that I should look into? Um, let me know. Let me know. And I don't know how this will relate to the Clayface film. I know that Matt Hagen is apparently the version that we're getting in the Clayface movie, not Basil Carlo. So if there's anything related to Matt Hagen that I should read, let me know. But yeah, let me know all your thoughts relating to Clayface. If there's any, like I said, any comics or anything specific that I should be reading up on him. So I wouldn't mind reading other stuff, especially if Matt Hagen is a different take, on the character. I would like to see what that version is, especially since that's the one we're getting in the movies. But let me know. Let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. And that's me for this video, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.